Today's topic then, I call it faith in times of duress. And basically I would like to address two issues which have come up. I think it's natural that things like this come up during the time of the virus. And one of them is the question of what does it mean to have faith during the time of duress? And the second one is about something that I saw on YouTube by one of the, and I'd like to actually strengthen their opinion, Rabbi Manis Friedman, who's a very important spokesperson ideologically for the Chabad. And he has a lot of interesting videos, and something he brought up just last week, and I think is a very important point, and I saw there was a lot of criticism against him, and therefore I want to be mechazek him, I want to strengthen his position, and I want to start with that, and then I'll go back to the issue of faith. In Rabbi Friedman's video, which he calls Dear Rabbis, and I forget the rest of it, I'm hoping that it's not rabbis who have a different opinion to what he said. But he says there are a lot of people looking for what is the reason that there's a coronavirus, and what is the reason? And is it a punishment for something? And they keep looking to see if it's a punishment for something, which is a very dangerous way to interpret religion, assuming that all bad things have a punishment which is obvious to you what the sin was. So Rabbi Friedman says something very interesting, and then I will talk about the Talmudic approach. He said something very interesting. He said, look, God met us 3,500 years ago at Sinai. He took us out of Egypt, gave us his Torah. We said, we will na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we shall hear. And we accepted it. And there was the prophets who came with us into the land. But then after that, the temples were destroyed twice. 2,000 years we've been in exile. And it hasn't been a picnic. Not only did God hide his countenance from the Jewish people, but we went through a lot of persecution in all various countries, and Jews ran from one place to another, trying to save themselves. And it was no picnic. And in the 20th century, it's not as if things got a little bit better. In the middle of the 20th century, we had probably one of the most devastating phenomena of anti-Semitism ever known to man in the Second World War. So he said, it's a miracle that there's still Jews around who keep the faith. It's actually a miracle that there are Jews who still want to keep the Torah in face of everything which happened, not only in our distant past, but even in our recent past. So how can you blame them and say that God is nitpicking with them and bringing coronavirus because the Jews did some sin? How can you possibly say such a thing like that? Now, and I looked in the, the comments, and somebody was saying, what do you mean? The Torah says if something happens. So I would like to address that. Especially I want to address that because we are coming up to the Parsha at the end of Vayikra, B'chukotai, in Vayikra, the end of the book of Leviticus, where it talks about the blessings and the curses, which seems to strengthen the position of those who say if we have curses and blessings, then we have to look for the reasons, right? Okay, so let's start with the blessings and the curses. In two places in the Torah, there are blessings and curses. One is the end of Leviticus 27, one is the end of Devarim 28. It's Parshat B'chukotai, and then after Parshat Kitavo. So the first thing I want to mention, the blessings and the curses in the Torah are talking about the collective of the Jewish people. Yes, there is divine providence over the collective of the Jewish people. And the Torah can say that if you follow the Torah, it will bring you blessing. If you don't follow, it will bring you curse. But that's different than an individual getting up and saying, I'm going to tell you what the reason is. That person lost their brother because they did this, or that person lost their father because they did this, or they got cancer because they did that. That is a very dangerous thing to do and totally unauthorized from a Jewish point of view. You know, we have a book in the Torah which is called the Book of Eov, the Book of Job. According to the Book of Job, Job was a righteous man, and all of a sudden his life went off in a terrible way. All these plagues struck his family: death, famine, poverty. And Job's wife finally says to him, Barech Elohim v'meit, curse God and die, because look how terrible your life is. But Job did not. And then Job had these quote-unquote friends. And each one of the friends of Job was telling him, why you're suffering, Job? Eliphaz, oh, you pretend to be righteous. But if you're suffering, it really means that at night, before your dreams, you're thinking about all these terrible things that you want to do, and that's why you're being punished. And then the second one says something, and the third one says something. And they all have, in their philosophical, religio-philosophical speculations, they have reasons why Job is being punished. And at the end of the book, chapter 42, God appears in a tempest to Job. And God says, all of your friends were wrong. All of their speculations about sins that brought this upon, no. But Job wants to know why. And God says to him, he just answers the question with a question. He says, where were you when I created the universe? Do you know this? Do you know that? And you really want to know why? So people have to be very careful. You have to be very careful. And you have to be humble. As somebody once said, real faith is strong enough to be able to encompass some doubt, or the fact that we don't know everything. Those who feel that they need an answer for everything right now, it's really a lack of faith. If your faith is strong enough, the answers will come in their proper time, and you'll have to live with it the way it is now. Now, you could say to me, wait a second. Even before that, by the way. So the book of Job says, okay, all these friends of Job had these religious answers of why Job was being persecuted. God says it's not true. In the book of Job, which according, by the way, to our tradition, was written by Moses. The Talmud, by the way, in Brachot, says that Moses, when he said to God, show me your countenance. And God said, I cannot show you my countenance, for a person cannot see my face and without dying. So I can show you from the back. The Talmud says, what does it mean, show me your countenance? What did Moses want to know? Talmud says, Moses had 3 requests. 2 of them God granted him, and 1 of them he did not. I just want to focus on the third. The third request that Moses wanted to know from God is Madua tzaddik v'ralo v'rasha v'tovlo. How come sometimes the righteous suffer and the wicked prosper? And to that God answered, you cannot see my face and still be alive. Those are one of those questions I cannot answer you while you are still part of this world, of this play, of this game called mankind, called life. I cannot reveal that to you now. Time comes, after the fact, I can start telling you some things about this. Pirkei Avot, our Ethics of the Fathers, part of the Mishnah. Rabbi Alexandri says in Pirkei Avot, Ein bi'adenu, lo mishalvat harishayim v'lo miyisurei hatzadikim. The Tana Rabbi Alexandri says, we do not really understand neither why the righteous suffer, nor why the wicked prosper. There's no real way for a human being to be able to have an answer to that question in this world. And the Talmud in Kiddushin says, Schar mitzvot b'hai al maleka, the reward for the commandments does not take place in this world. It might take place, there's a Mishnah in Peah which says maybe some of it, but the majority of the word cannot take place in this world. Keren kayamet le'olam haba. Yes. So, and Jeremiah, the prophet Jeremiah, in chapter 11 says, Madua derech reshaim tzalecha, why is it, God, that the path of evil people seems to be successful? Shalu kol bogdei baged. It's not fair. God doesn't answer Yirmiyahu. He doesn't answer Jeremiah. Not in this world. So, if Jeremiah didn't know, if the Tana, Rabbi Alexandri, didn't know, if according to the Talmud Moses didn't know, so how come there's some guy who thinks he knows? Real rabbis know not to give answers to something where the Talmud says we don't have. Now, a person could say, but wait a sec. The Talmud itself in Brachot, this is page 5 in Brachot, in the name of Rava, and there are those who say in the name of Rav Chisda. This is third generation Amoraim in Babylonia. It says, if a person sees that suffering has come upon him, which means he should check his actions. Maybe he did something wrong. Maybe this is a punishment. And if you didn't find something, then blame it on the fact that you're not studying Torah enough. So wait a sec, isn't Rava saying that if suffering comes upon us, we have to look for reason? Yes, we do. But we don't have to look for reason for somebody else. Yes, ethically, if there's suffering, you have to think, how can I improve myself? How can I get more merit? How can I push myself forward, and then maybe God will change my situation? Maybe I'll be able to merit a better situation. But finger pointing to somebody else, don't blame Rava for that. He's not saying that. He's saying the individual should say that about themselves. Be critical about yourself, not about others. Now, if you're talking about others, okay, I'll give you an example of others. The Talmud in Psachim. The Talmud in Psachim, page 87a. So the Talmud says, why is it the book of Hosea, the first of the what's called the minor prophets, the 12 minor prophets, why does it start off in such a strange way? It starts off with a story that Hosea is told by God to marry a harlot and to have children from her. And supposedly the children he calls Lo Amiatem, they're not my people, and the children have names of the sins of Israel. And then the second chapter, for some strange reason, the second chapter of Hosea starts, he's blessing the Jewish people. And he says, the Jewish people will be like the sands of the sea. And instead of being called not my people, they will be called the people of the living God. So Talmud says, what's going on here? Talmud says, I'll tell you what's going on here. I'll tell you a story. And the Talmud tells us a story. The inside story of what's going on at the beginning of Hosea. Talmud says, the Holy One, blessed be He, said to Hosea the prophet, Banecha chatu, your people have sinned. And Hosea should have answered and should have said, what do you mean? He said, Banecha chatu, your children, meaning the Jewish people, have sinned. And the prophet's response should have been, Banai, my children? They're your children, God. B'nei bechunecha, the children that you adore, the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So you have to be compassionate. Lo dayosh lo markach. It's not bad enough that he didn't say that. But this is what Hosea said to the Holy One, blessed be He. He said, Master of the universe, the whole world belongs to you. You don't like the your people, just switch them for another people. That's okay. The Holy One, blessed be he, said to himself, what am I going to do to this old man? I need to teach him a lesson. Omarlo, I will tell him, go and take for yourself a wife, a harlot, and have children, illegitimate children who you will not even know who the father is. And then I want to see if he's going to send them away. If he's willing to send away his children, okay, maybe I'll consider sending away my children, the Jewish people. So he told them to marry the harlot, and he had 2 children, and this is already in the verses. After the 2 children, it's on the next page in the Talmud, after the 2 children were born, and there was a daughter and 2 sons, so it was 3 children, the Holy One, blessed be he, said to Hosea, you should have learned from Moses. When I spoke to Moses, your master, he left his wife. So, therefore, I'm saying to you now, leave her. Hosea turned to God and said, Master of the universe, I have children from her. I can't get rid of her. I can't divorce her. So the Holy One, blessed be he, said to Hosea, look at you. This woman that you married is a harlot. You have children, but you don't even know if they're yours. And you're telling me that you cannot send them away, but you want me to send away my children, the Jewish people, children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? So then the Talmud says, and you're telling me to switch them from another people? The Talmud says, Kevan she'adachata. When Hosea realized he had sinned, he started asking mercy upon himself before God. But the Holy One, blessed be he, said, wait a second. Before you start asking mercy upon yourself, ask mercy upon the Jewish people. That's your job. The Talmud is crystal clear. The place of a leader is to defend the Jewish people, not look for the reasons why suffering has come upon them, not look for to see what sin they did, to defend them before God. Abraham did that with the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Moses did that at the sin of the golden calf. And he said to God, if you don't forgive them, then I don't want to be in your book. That is what a leader does. And Noah, who did not do that, and did not try to defend the generation in the flood. So the prophet Yeshayahu calls the whole deluge, the whole flood, Kimei Noach Zotli. This is the deluge of Noah because it's his fault. He didn't try to defend mankind from such a thing happening. So basically, I'm saying that Rabbi Friedman was 100% right, according to our sources. Rabbinic leaders and all leaders have to defend the Jewish people before God, just like the early prophets did. And not start looking for what sin caused that and what sin caused that. Yes, educate people, help them, strengthen them, enthuse them, give them a path. But don't talk about made-up sins that you have no idea about, if happen or not happen. Then there are, of course, other people. I heard this from my sister in New York. People calling themselves rabbis in New York are saying, well, how can you follow isolation? Don't you have faith in God? If you have faith in God, then you'll go to the synagogue, even if there are a lot of people, and you'll do this, and if you get sick, but you have to have faith in God, right? Wrong. You see, the difference between Judaism and Avodah Zarah and foreign religions, we have what's called halakha. And halakha is Jewish law. Now a person can say, okay, you got sick. Person is deathly sick, but it's Shabbat. What, I'm going to send him to the hospital and break Shabbat by putting him in a taxi? If God wants to save him, he'll save him, right? No. Halakha says it's incumbent upon you to send him to the hospital. That's halakha. Halakha makes these decisions, not the individual. When the individual decides what God wants, that's Avodah Zarah. That's paganism. The halakha is our direction. And so when the halakha says that there's a difficult situation out there, and people have to isolate because that's what the doctors told us, and it says in Bava Kama that v'rapo v'rapeh, that a person is supposed to listen to what the doctor says, somebody who's an expert in the field, before making a decision. So when the experts say that it is dangerous, so then it's not a loss of faith to isolate yourself. It's an act of faith to isolate yourself. It means you're believing in halakha. You're believing of the way of Jewish law. That is what Judaism is all about. And the ones talking about some very nebulous concept of faith, these are the idol worshippers who don't understand halakha and don't understand Talmudic thinking. I'm sorry I sound a little critical today, but this was the idea I wanted to get across. And here today on Lag BaOmer, on the 33rd day of the Omer, where according to our sources, the Magefa, which could be interpreted as the plague which happened to Rabbi Akiva's students, stopped. So may this plague also stop for us, for all the Jewish people, and for the whole world together. Amen.